the master to embody the power, and the apprentice to crave it.
In the last days of the Old Republic, the Sith, followers of the Force's dark side and ancient enemies of the Jedi Order, numbered only two, one master and one apprentice. Yet it was not always so. 1,000 years before the Republic's collapse and Emperor Palpatine's rise to power, the Sith were legion.
Hi everyone, this is OG Star Wars, your Legends girl, trying to make it in this discounted world, and today our lore video is on the Darth Bane Trilogy, and the first book is The Path of Destructions, and I will have it, a little image right here as well. And so this is one of the better, or the most popular trilogy in the Old Republic, and I'm excited to bring you some stories from the Old Republic, getting out of the post-Return of the Jedi era of Star Wars. And so we have Darth Bane, whose original name is Dessel, and he basically was an indentured miner. And so we see in this book that he did not have a well-to-do life. He grew up in the mines, and he was also verbally abused by his father. And in the book we find out that, they lose his mother, and the father blames him, and thus calling him Bane. And so we're going to go ahead and listen to this clip a little bit more into the history of why, Des is called Bane.
Should have expected this from a mud-crutch whelp like you. Gerd continued. Hurst always said you were no good. He knew there was something wrong with you. Bane. Des narrowed his eyes, but didn't rise to the bait. Hurst had called him by that name when he was drunk. Bane. He'd blamed his son for his wife's death. Blamed him for being stuck on Apatros. He considered his only child to be the bane of his existence, a fact he'd tended to spit out at Des in his drunken rages. Bane. It represented everything spiteful, petty, and mean about his father. It struck at the innermost fears of every child. Fear of disappointment, fear of abandonment, fear of violence. As a kid, that name had hurt more than all the smacks from his father's heavy fists. But Des wasn't a kid anymore. Over time, he'd learned to ignore it, along with all the rest of the hateful bile that spilled from his father's mouth. I don't have time for this, he muttered. I've got work to do. With one hand, he grabbed the hydraulic jack from Gerd's grasp. He put the other hand on Gerd's shoulder and shoved him away. Stumbling back, the inebriated man caught his heel on a rock and fell roughly to the ground. He stood up with a snarl, his hands balling into fists. Guess your daddy's been gone too long, boy. You need someone to beat the sense back into you.
So this is how we find out, or have a hint on, where Des gets his name. And it goes back to the root of his father, him and his father's relationship, and what his father calls him. And so I find that very interesting and fitting for his character. And we also find out that Des does escape from the mines. And through this, we also learn that he is very strong in the Force, and particularly in the dark side of the Force. And during this time frame, he also has some trouble with the Republic forces. So he kills a troop that's in the Republic forces, and he finds help, which someone helps him get off the planet. And he's like, I know this, you're a warrior, you're a fighter, and I know that this organization, basically, that you probably would want to join, and that ends up being the Brotherhood of Darkness. So we start getting making our way towards Bane, or towards Dessel, or Des becoming Darth Bane. So now Des finds himself training on Korriban in the Brotherhood of Darkness under Lord Khan and the other lords that are training. And we find out that under the Brotherhood of Darkness, there are different factions that they put potential Force users or dark side Force users or Sith. And the highest faction or academy you can train in is the one that's established on Korriban, and that is basically where the very high potential Force, dark Force side users are trained to become lords. And not everybody passes that training, but if you have the potential, then you train in there, in that academy on Korriban. And during that time, he names himself Bane. Again, this is the arc of his story and how he gets his name, where he gets his name. It all ties in to this man who is filled with anger and filled with wants power and and control and stuff. And so this fits his arc very, very well. And it's a very compelling story. And I'm going to say this, a very great read. On the Han, Bane finds a holocron that was constructed by Revan. And then he begins his further studies of the Sith alchemy, of the Sith lore. And he is very hungry for that knowledge, and he takes everything in, and he learns about the name or the title Darth, and then he gives himself that title, which is frowned upon by the Brotherhood of Darkness. And he studies and realizes that the modern Sith that he's learning from are basically on their way to extinction due to their infighting and to the structure of the Brotherhood of Darkness. And so we start seeing the reality of the Rule 2 coming into play, which I find fascinating, and even his philosophy behind that, which we see further into the Star Wars lore. And that philosophy basically is the master to embody the power and the apprentice to crave it. So we see this. So we see that because of the fact that the Brotherhood of Darkness has too many leaders, and there's all this bickering in the faction of the leadership, that it's destroying the Sith from the inside. And so from there, we see him, start realizing the Rule of 2. From there, he plots to destroy the Brotherhood of Darkness, and Lord Khan basically doesn't trust him, and he sends out Githany, who used to be a Jedi, and now she's turned basically Sith, or to the dark side, and he sends her to seduce and poison Darth Bane. And we see within that arc there that she's not successful. We also get to see Lord Hoth in the series, and the Jedi as well, and they are basically the army of the light. And there's a battle going on Ruusan, and we see Lord Hoth becoming very cynical because he's watching all of his Jedi die before him, and he's feeling the defeat, feeling the demeanor of the remaining Jedi, and he's basically teetering on the dark side with his emotions and everything. And on Ruusan, they prepare for battle against the Sith, and he does come to eventually. And if you look into the history of Star Wars, Lord Hoth, do you know what planet is named after him? I'm pretty sure it's obvious. So in the studies of the holocron that was made by Darth Revan, Darth Bane learns about the thought bomb. And from there, he basically goes to Lord Khan and shares that thought bomb with him. And they use it on Ruusan against the Jedi. And Lord Khan is very skeptical about using it as well, because he's not sure that the Sith are going to be like-minded and strong enough to overcome the thought bomb. He still uses it, And basically it sucks everybody, all the Force users, into it, the spirits, and traps them in its orb. But Bane does survive. So Lord Khan basically destroys the Brotherhood of Darkness and the Jedi, the Army of the Light, the Jedi that are there. And Bane survives from that. So in a way, you know, Bane, given that information, that thought bomb to Khan, helped defeat or destroy the Brotherhood of Darkness. So to conclude this little lore clip review of the Path of Destruction, we do know that Darth Bane takes an apprentice, and her name is Zana. And she becomes a pivotal character in the series, in the trilogy, and she's another well-liked or favored character in Star Wars in the Old Republic under Darth Bane. And we start seeing the Rule of Two enacted, which is our next book in the series to review, the Rule of Two. So thank you so much for listening in my little review, going over the book Path of Destruction with you. Please let me know your favorite moment in this book in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate that so much. It just encourages me to give you guys more content of the original lore of Star Wars, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. May the Force be with you.
Peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion I gain strength. Through strength I gain power. Through power I gain victory. Through victory my chains are broken.